Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and David. I'm Brad Carlyon, your Navajo County Attorney.
I'm David Clouse, your Navajo County Sheriff.
And this month, our guest is the Arizona U.S. Marshal, David Gonzales. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
The U.S. Marshal Service has been in the news in Navajo County in the last couple months. We had that couple that was being transported down to Tucson that escaped in Utah.
Yes.
And they thought they might be in this area.
Right.
And then we had the private transport bail bonds people transporting somebody in Heber that escaped.
What are the odds of two back-to-back happening in the county here?
So why does the U.S. Marshal get involved in something like that?
Well, and that's an excellent question because these are state and local crimes. But one of the primary functions of the United States Marshal Service is to hunt down fugitives worldwide. And as part of our jobs, we work with state and local police agencies to hunt down fugitives for the county or the city, especially those that they think might be out of their jurisdiction or might be out of the country, and they might not have the resources, the deputies or the police officers to assign to that. So, and that's what we do when we come in. We adopt the case with a federal charge, and then that gives us the legal authority to go after these individuals.
I assume that's not all that you do is chase after people that have escaped. What is the U.S. Marshal? What do you do?
Well, if you don't mind, if I could start from the very beginning. We're the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country. We were created in 1789 with the first Judicial Act of Congress, and George Washington appointed the first 13 U.S. Marshals, one in the first 13 states, and that tradition holds today, where the president appoints the U.S. Marshal for, now there are 93 federal districts, and I was originally appointed by George W. Bush, but our duties have evolved over the years. In addition to hunting down fugitives, we're responsible for protecting the judiciary, protecting federal judges and the courthouses. One of the most interesting things we do is we manage the witness protection program, which is absolutely fascinating. And those are individuals who testify for the government, and in lieu of doing that, they come to the witness protection program where we change everything about them. And it can be controversial because some of these individuals, like Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was in the program, you might agree or disagree, but that is not our call. That is usually the prosecutors, the U.S. attorneys. But once we get them, we'll change everything about their background and put them in a location where hopefully that they can thrive and survive.
But what do you do with somebody like Sammy who makes it public who he is, and he's in the program and he's in your jurisdiction?
They're not in the program very long.
Okay.
I'll just tell you that. So, and it's if an individual in that program follows our guidelines and our policies, it's been 100% effective. Those individuals that don't, obviously, the ramifications. Sometimes they'll on their own determine that they don't want to be in the program anymore because they cannot, they don't want to live that way anymore for whatever reason, or sometimes we'll kick them out because of not following our policies and procedures.
It sounds like you have a varied and interesting portfolio of things you do. How did you get into it? How did you get, and you've done it for a long time, if you had Bush appoint you.
Yes.
What was your background to get this?
Prior to that, I had a great career with Arizona Department of Public Safety. I was joined when I was 21 years old, and I was sent to Tucson out of the academy, and started as a patrol officer, and did that for a couple years, and then I was 23 at the time. I looked like I was 16, and there was a big push for narcotics agents. So I got recruited to go work narcotics in southern Arizona and to infiltrate the cartels and the smuggling groups that were down there. So I said, hey, sounds like fun. So I did that for about 3.5 years, and then was promoted to sergeant, stayed in narcotics. And then I met my wife finishing school at the U of A, and she was in law school there, and she got a job in Phoenix at a law firm there, and she says, hey, can you get a job with DPS in Phoenix? So we moved to Phoenix, and then I promoted up to lieutenant and commander, and oversaw Criminal Investigations Bureau, gangs, narcotics, the Governor's Protection Detail. Had a good variety of experience. And you know, I always knew the U.S. Marshals. I worked with them when I was with DPS, and I knew that the head of the office, in this case, the District of Arizona is just one federal district. I knew the president appointed the U.S. Marshals. So when George W. Bush was elected, the people that were making the nomination to the president were at that time were Senator McCain and Senator Kyle. So I applied for the position, as probably maybe 100 other people did, and they did their checking and whatever they did, and then both senators selected me to President Bush to be the United States Marshal. I was also fortunate to be reappointed by President Obama, which is unusual. Usually when a new president comes in, especially from a different party, they sweep out all the old riffraff, you know, and start all over. And then also with President Trump reappointed me. So I served under 3 presidents.
So how, do you have terms, or just when a new president comes in, they have the choice to retain or ask you to move on?
Yeah, usually the term is a new president will ask you that, or reappoint somebody else. And you know that going in. It's the same with the United States attorney. And you know, and you assume that when a new president comes in that you'll be leaving. And I have no problems with that. I was expecting to leave, but was blessed to serve under 3 presidents now.
Exciting.
Yes.
I think that's one of the unique things. You've been at 18 years?
18 years as U.S. Marshal for Arizona.
For Arizona,
yeah.
Which is a long term. But I think one of the things is local law enforcement, county, state, cities. You're a local yourself.
I'm a local myself. And, you know, actually, I forgot to tell you guys, I really started as a sheriff's deputy in Coconino County in Flagstaff. I was born and raised in Flagstaff, and I was hired as a sheriff's deputy when I was 19 years old, and a patrol deputy. And Joe Richards was the sheriff at the time. And you know, there's always somebody in your life that gave you that push, that helped you, and he's the one in my life now. The interesting thing about that is that at 19, I wasn't old enough to buy a gun or weapon or ammunition. So if I wanted to go shoot my weapon or go out and test fire or just go through the range, I'd have to go to my sergeant to buy me bullets for my service revolver. So they changed the law later, probably because of me, to 21 to be a police officer. But at that time, I started when I was 19 years old.
Yeah, just a young kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think that's a great part of working with you. Is a lot of the other appointees on the federal agencies and the FBI, DEA, they come from all across the county or country.
Yes.
And then you've worked with a lot of the sheriffs across the state through DPS, and you've worked a lot of chiefs of police across the state, and I think that's why there's such a good relationship there. Yeah,
you know, like during the Barksdale situation, you know, one of the first persons I called was Sheriff Clouse. Because you know the area, you know the people, you know, we can't do our job without your support. And yeah, that one call to you was that you know, he opened up his doors, and everybody in Navajo County did, you know, and also in Apache County. But since most of it was centered in Navajo County, close up to Snowflake, and the resources that we needed to bring in to work with Navajo County, and I think having that experience as a sheriff's deputy and as a state trooper and working around the state, I know the sensitivities, you know, and especially with federal agents, they do come and go while you guys are here, and you have to deal with the issues once we leave. So I am sensitive to those things.
Yeah, and you definitely are, and I appreciated those. I think it was a Friday night,
yes,
and we got a phone call, and I knew that case was just a couple days old,
right,
and happened in Utah, and
yes,
I had a feeling of like, you know, we're in the close proximity. That when you called, I appreciate that cooperation, because you're exactly right. As a lot of people, local authorities, local sheriffs. They understand the sensitivity and the the nature of what's going on in our counties and want to understand what is all going to transpire. And I think we had a great relationship there in working on that.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about that case. You've chased fugitives all across the country and across the world.
Yes.
Anything unique about this, or why did it get so much headlines across the country?
It was very unique in that, you know, the Marshal Service had originally arrested the two in upstate New York.
Yeah. Well, they're already fugitives then.
Yes. Oh. They were wanted for a murder in Tucson. And it was a Tucson PD case, and they asked us if we could find the Barksdales. And it took us about 2 weeks, and we tracked them to New York State and arrested them there. And then at that point, it's the Sheriff's Department's responsibility, in this case it was Pima County, to get them back to Pima County to face charges. And what Pima County did, they don't do it anymore, but with a lot of Sheriff's Department, because of the costs are very high on extraditions, as you know, Sheriff.
Yeah.
And
I pay him. So
you pay him, yes, you know, yes.
He has to do it, but I got to pay him.
Oh, you got to pay him, okay.
If he wants him to be in trial,
yeah, he has to pay for it.
Yeah.
And then this is a big issue around the country. On a side note, we'll arrest people, and say a community in Florida. I mean, I arrest them on serious charges. They'll say, "Hey, let them go. We can't afford to pick them up. We'll wait till they get back in the area," which is pretty sad. But in this case, a private company was used to transport these individuals. In driving them from upstate New York to Tucson is like. I couldn't. It was unusual. I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you.
Just in a van.
In a van.
And they make stops everywhere.
They make stops everywhere.
Pick up and drop off.
Yeah, it's almost like a shuttle van. They'll stop and pick up people and drop off people, and in this case also the people, the guards, if you will, it was a man and a woman, did have the background, the training to be doing this type of work.
Especially with that caliber of inmate.
Yeah, and they were.
You can have a low level.
Yeah, okay, maybe if there was one for shoplifting, but you know, these people were very serious and very dangerous in our opinion, and they were able to. They spent the night in Utah, and then that morning, as they left, they were able to come up with the ruse that Mrs. Barksdale, she had to go to the bathroom or something, and at that point, when they pulled over, they overpowered them. I don't think it took much, but they overpowered them, and then boom, here we go, you know,
And here's a little clarification. I'm sure you've had a lot of questions. I've definitely had a lot of questions locally. People say, well, the U.S. Marshals arrest them in New York, and you don't immediately hand them over to a private transport company. No. You hand them over to the local sheriff in New York.
Yes.
And and then they contact. You can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll book them into a local sheriff's department. And then
on the warrant.
On the warrant.
Yeah.
And then the county, in this case Pima County, will make arrangements with that county and that state, you know, for the extradition back. And once that's worked out,
and the governor's warrants.
And the governor's warrants, and they'll do all that, and then once that's all cleared, then they can be transported back to the jurisdiction where they wanted.
Yeah, and sometimes what will happen is the sheriff will say, well, I have an extradition team, I don't have enough, so then they contact these private transport companies that do that.
Right, exactly. I think the proper procedure in this one, and that's what we would do, is I would have sent 2 or 3 deputy marshals by plane and brought them back the next day. I can't imagine a 7-10 day car ride and van ride from New York to Tucson, something with wanted murderers.
Yeah.
But
and I think that's something that's always weighs, and you understand this because you guys do a lot of transporting of prisoners, weighs on the sheriff's minds all across the state is in the country is we transport to local courts and we transport to other jurisdictions. If I have a prisoner in Yuma County and they have one of mine, then we'll meet. And every day we do those transports, there's a lot of risk, and we're always trying to minimize that risk.
But the other question for these statewide transports is the cost.
Yeah.
What would your cost have been to send 2 deputies back to New York, fly them out, and then 4 tickets back?
Yeah.
You know, is it cheaper to do the van?
Well, and that's, I think, why some small agencies do that.
You balance.
Yeah, you do have to balance it, but then you take care of the safety issues, and it's something that the administrators have to look at. And like, also, I'm responsible for all pre-trial prisoners in the federal court system here in Arizona. And
so you're kind of like a sheriff at the national level.
Exactly. Right? Yes, and
or federal level.
A federal level, yeah. We are the kind of the federal sheriff.
So see, his badge kind of looks like
it kind of looks pretty close.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And this morning I have about 5,100 prisoners in custody.
Over 5,000.
Yes, and it's been higher. Now you can.
That's your district, right?
Just Arizona.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that 80% of those prisoners are on immigration-related cases, charges.
It's about 4,000 of them.
Yes, because of the border, and our Tucson office is the busiest office, U.S. Marshal's office in the country. They get about 300 prisoners a day coming through the courthouse there. And let me give you an example. If, let's say, Border Patrol today arrests 1,000 people on the border. They screen them and work with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they'll screen them down to about 300, and that's who are federally charged. And those then, once they're federally charged.
So those aren't immigration court. That's a different court. Or is that immigration court?
No, that's a federal court system.
So okay.
In the
Tucson district.
The district office, and then the others are handled administratively.
Do the
administrative.
Right. That court up in Florence area. That
yes,
immigration court.
Exactly. Or they're immediately deported. And then I'll get about 300 that are coming into the actual federal court system.
So what kind of charges are they coming in on?
Primarily, they're all kinds of immigration-related charges. The vast majority of them are entering the country illegally. Maybe this is their second, third, fourth, or fifth time, and that's why they're being officially charged and coming into the court system.
But the U.S. Marshals, your office didn't do the arrest.
No,
you're just in charge of the prison.
We're in charge of processing.
So do you have your own jail for all these people?
Well, that's a great question. I don't. So what I have to do is I contract out with a private prison in Florence. There's a company called CoreCivic. It used to be called CCA. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest private prison in the country. And when I'm talking about this, some people who will get upset because they don't believe in private prisons. Now, regardless of what you feel about them, I have no choice. I have no place to put 5,000 prisoners. Sheriff, you could take maybe 50 or 100, maybe on a good day, but there's just no place to put them. So you can imagine the costs associated with just, not just, there are a lot of prisoners that I deal with. It costs 10, 15 million a month to house and process those prisoners.
So like Sheriff Clouse, do you have to transport them from where they're being held to the court?
No, as part of our contract, they'll send them on buses to both Phoenix and Tucson for court, and then they'll take them back to the facility in Florence, Arizona.
So they provide the security for the transport. Do they provide the security at the courthouse, or is that yours?
In the courthouse, it's the U.S. Marshals. They get them there and they take them away. But once they get in the courthouse, then there are responsibilities to get them into court, and the federal judges will do whatever they do, and then we get them back, and then they'll do a lot of these immigration cases. And this is unusual in the federal system. They'll be sentenced to 30, 60, 90, 180 days in jail. The federal system isn't designed for that. So of those prisoners, a couple of thousand of those will be prisoners that are just doing their 30, 60, 90 days. We call them STS or short-term sentencing. And then once they do their time with us, then we release them to ICE, who are then deported. Then they're deported from there.
So how many employees do you have to do all these tasks and duties that you have?
In Arizona, I have about 150 deputy U.S. Marshals, and then an administrative staff of about another 40. So, almost about 200. Not enough, but you do what you have to do. All of us are short-handed in these times, but it's tough on the employees, especially in the border communities where we get a lot of immigration issues of Tucson and Yuma. And then we'll rotate the deputy marshals, and then to the other duties. A lot of them would want to go do fugitive operations.
It sounds like more fun.
It is, and the witness protection program. We also have the asset forfeiture part of DOJ, the U.S. Marshals handle, when federal agencies seize houses or money or whatever from major crime organizations. It's our jobs to manage those assets until they're disposed of by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
So not all your employees are out chasing fugitives, because you're doing transports, you're doing security at courts. I mean, you're
right. I do have fugitive task forces, and you've met a lot of the men and women during the Barksdale case. I have two in Tucson, in Phoenix, one in Tucson, one in Yuma, and one in Flagstaff, and we work jointly with our state and local partners who are in our task forces with us.
And we have just a few minutes left. I wanted to touch on the second phone call you and I had.
Okay.
So when we got the Barksdales in custody, it was on September 11th.
Yes.
And I remember that night. And that same night we had another escapee.
Right.
Not any of your doings or my doings. But then I called you right after you said, hey, we got the Barksdales in custody. Then we talked about, well, we got another guy escaped. Tell us a little bit about that case.
Oh, that was a very interesting case also. We had some bounty hunters that were taking a group to North Carolina.
Yeah, they're traveling through
Heber, and same kind of deal. They wanted to go to the bathroom, right? One of the presidents wanted to go to the bathroom. It's the Circle K.
Circle K on
down
260 in Heber.
And they overpowered them also, and then he was on the run, and we talked about that case, and our guys working with the sheriff here tracked him to the West Valley, and we knew he was inside this house in the West Valley, and he wouldn't come out. He went up in the attic, which a lot of fugitives do, and I don't know why, because we learned that
play already.
Yeah,
right?
we know that one, and he would not come out. He would not come out, and basically he had to be. We pumped some gas in there, and that didn't work. And then it came down to having to break the drywall off the ceiling before he would come down. And there's a very interesting picture of him right after the arrest, where he's covered with the insulation from the ceiling, which made an interesting photograph. But that was another interesting case, and the similarities were very interesting, where you had two private companies.
They were. Bathroom ruse.
Bathroom, yes.
But I think that goes into your original statement, where you said we help a lot of local, state, county, city jurisdictions, because they left Navajo County.
Yes.
And we had information through our local investigation where we found a vehicle that was stolen.
Yes.
And then we found an iPad that was stolen.
Yes.
And then the owner tracked the iPad back to the Tolleson area.
Right.
And so we said, and that's when I called you and said, I need help.
Yep.
And because I just don't have the assets to dedicate to Phoenix for a week.
Exactly.
How many hotel rooms would that take? And I think that's where we work really good together.
Right. And then in the West Valley, we worked with our West Valley partners, all the local police departments there, from our task forces. Glendale PD SWAT team came in. That's one thing about Arizona. All the local agencies, federal, state, local, tribal agencies, work very well together.
Yes.
You don't see that a lot around the country.
It's surprising.
No, it's back east. I see it a lot in the south. A lot of jurisdictional squabbles, whatever.
So Van, one of your lead marshals, mentioned that he'd been on fugitive task force in California, southern, northern,
Texas,
all across the country, and he said working in Arizona was.
Yeah, we're very, I don't know if it's unique, but we're very blessed that all the agencies, it doesn't matter where you work, if somebody needs something, they're happy and they just give whatever they need to get the job done.
I would expect that everywhere. We're
No,
all
it's
the same team.
No, Brad,
I'm
I'm sorry. It's sad.
Wow.
And that's one good thing about Arizona. He can call anytime. I can call him anytime. And it doesn't matter. The tribes, the police department, city sheriff's department, and everybody will do what they have to do to assist another agency.
Yeah, and I think the way it's worked, and I like to carry that tradition on here as sheriff in Navajo County, is anytime I go to another county, if I'm running an operation or investigation that originates here in Show Low, but say they're hiding out in Gila County or all our neighboring counties, I call that sheriff and I say, Sheriff, this is what's going on, and we're going to do a search warrant in this area, and yeah, what do you need? And then they send some of their detectives to assist our guys because they have the local lay of the land, and it's always worked that way, and it continues to work that way, and just like Mr. Gonzales said, when he found that they possibly hiding in Navajo County, first thing he does is calls the sheriff. And,
that's right.
It's just
that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, because I could bring all these guys up from Phoenix or Tucson, but we'd get lost out here, and that's where we really need you, and it works both ways.
Yeah, it does, and it did.
Yes.
And when this guy escaped out of here and no longer in Navajo County, I felt it was very important that he was located. Not only did he come and commit a crime now that he needs to be held responsible for here in Arizona, but the crimes that he's responsible for in North Carolina. But before he leaves, I was like,
yeah, and that's the other thing about fugitives, and we arrest about 6,000 fugitives a year just in Arizona, because when a fugitive's out on the run, they need to commit crimes to survive.
Yeah.
Burglaries, robberies, selling dope, anybody that's been a victim of a burglary or a car theft or something, it's usually somebody that's desperate, and that's why it's so important to get these fugitives off the street, because it helps reduce crime, because they're going to commit crimes to survive.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened in Heber.
That's right.
He committed a crime to get back to Phoenix.
Yeah. He stole a car.
Stole a car and
the iPad.
And spent the night.
And I liked him stealing the iPad with the Find Me app on it.
Yeah. It sure makes tracking these guys down. And made a couple social media posts, but
yeah, that's right.
It helps when they're not the most bright people either.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time.
Oh,
and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for this month's Shooting Straight. Please stay tuned for this month's Most Wanted.
The Navajo County Sheriff's Office is asking for assistance from the public in locating Perry Jean Axon of Pinedale. Perry has valid warrants for assault and intimidation and stalking. Perry has a history of fleeing from law enforcement and should be considered dangerous. Anyone with information on Perry's whereabouts can call the Navajo County Sheriff's Office at 928-524-4050 or we tip at 1-800-78-CRIME.